This is the USAACE-8, 8 minutes with an Army aviation subject matter expert. Let's fly with a topic, changes to the Risk Common Operating Picture, or RCOP.
Captain Ashley Howard, the current Doctrine Branch Chief at the Directorate of Training and Doctrine, otherwise known as DOTD.
I am CBD4 Dustin Schnaible, a Doctrine developer at DOTD.
The latest RCOP, version 1.3.1, was published on 1 March 2024. What is the bottom line up front?
Following the Army Safety Stand-Down in 2023, the outbrief required us to capture compounding risk and ensure risk is briefed and approved at the appropriate risk levels. The RCOP version 1.3.1, effective on the 1st of March, addresses that factor.
What are the changes involving manual and digital enforcement of compounding risk thresholds?
Compounding risk thresholds are defined by the number of initial risk levels within each section. So see yourself, see the mission and environment, see the weather, and driven by the highest associated risk level. These thresholds are set by the CAB or state and briefed to their division commander. The highest risk still drives the residual risk on the RCOP. However, now the total number of elevated risk values, so moderate or high, will now lock that residual risk to no less than a moderate non-mitigatable once you surpass that threshold within that section. The intention here is to capture the effects of stress and fatigue and task saturation from our unit trainers getting after proficiency training across the force. While we may see an uptick of moderate or high risk missions, the goal here is to ensure the appropriate FMAA. So in this case, the battalion or brigade commanders are the ones that are accepting the risk of developing proficiency at a rate that outpaces our company commanders. The goal is not to gerrymander the RCOP to stay to a low or avoid quality training. With version 1.3.1, our SPs across the Army have pushed the algorithms to their operating limits and provided feedback, so we were able to correct the formula functions for digital use. There's really no visible change while you're using it manually. However, when you're looking on your 5484, the front sheet of your RCOP, there is an incorporated tally method for use when you go to print your RCOP for use in the field.
How has the experience sections been expanded?
The experience sections have been expanded to include series hours as well. That is for total and for MDS and VG. Also, version 1.3.1 now considers each crew member at their own risk level without increasing the risk by adding additional non-rated crew members. It does this by looking at the highest risk non-rated crew member and basically ignoring the lowest risk non-rated crew member. For example, if you have a PC with low, a PI moderate, an FE that's low, and a CE that's moderate, the residual risk will look at the moderate risk true chief, and the FE, who is a low risk, actually becomes a risk mitigator. Working with CAFers, we've also enabled an ad hoc series report to allow brigade command teams to pull the proper hours needed for this report.
How were mandated and recommended initial risk values adjusted?
Adjusted initial risk values for mandated and recommended were alongside accident trend data and DES observation. Recommended initial risk values were overwater, deck landing, and deck line qualifications, ranging from a moderate to a moderate non-mitigatable, dependent upon area of operation. Mixed MDS or large-scale multi-ship operations for H-64s were moderate due to the eyes of availability and training familiarity.
The only newly mandated risk levels were for AMS or CMF multi-ship, and these will be explained more in the upcoming AMS STACOM pending later this year. Currently, AMS or CMF multi-ship will be a high for day and an extremely high for NVD. The intention here is to drive this minimally as a battalion training program for the day and brigade when choosing to pursue NVD proficiency. One question survivability regularly gets regarding AMS and the RCOP is, what are we briefing task-wise when we check AMS on our brief sheet? On the brief sheet, when you check AMS, you're only briefing 2800 and 2900 series tasks, and we have further clarified this in the RCOP instructions.
How are additional value mitigation requirements to be validated?
Additional value mitigation requirements are to be validated by the MBO and the FMAA during the briefing process. So per the instructions in the RCOP guidance designed to expand the conversation between the IP, UTE, or PCs with their MBO and FMAA during the mission approval process, all emphasize a crawl, walk, run methodology in accordance with FM 7.0. This consideration was driven by the elevation of risk for AMS and combat maneuvering flight multi-ship, for which the training methodology will be published in the upcoming AMS STACOM later this spring. However, it is recommended to apply the same considerations to more complex mission sets that are not already mitigated by training gates outlined in TC 304.3 for gunnery or TC 304.11 for RL progressions.
How were RCOP instructions revised?
RCOP instructions were revised to capture compounding risk changes, update specific versus vague mission planning definitions, and streamline information for the end user.
What are the updated required academic topics?
The updated required academic topics for the RCOP include the mission approval process, compounding risk mitigation techniques, and the RCOP procedures. And that academics block of instruction is available for PME as well as for annual MBO FMAA academics on our SharePoint page. PME academics are tailored to each audience for AV, CCC, AWS, AWOLI, and PCC for those individuals' input throughout the mission approval process. They utilize the same academic slide deck that's available on our SharePoint, again under the A box, Annex Charlie, with all RCOP documents. We've effectively begun our second round through each of these PMEs.
What else do our listeners need to know?
One question that seems to come up in each of our PME instructions is, how is this document saving lives? And our answer every single time so far has been balancing risk to mission versus risk to force. Company commanders are so focused down and in training individual faces as they're putting those names on that RCOP. And with primary unit trainers, PCs, UTEs, IPs, they're all getting at it. They're pulling at the end of their leash and they're training hard, developing proficiency for every single face in their formation. With this document, our intention is to pull that risk back just a little bit, put it in the purview of the battalion and brigade commanders who see the risk that they're applying by giving them this mission set. They want to pull it back away from training individual faces, training the formation, accepting the risk at the right level so that we're not leaning too far forward and endangering those faces that are linked to the names simply on this piece of paper.
Thank you for listening to the USAACE-8, brought to you by the United States Army Aviation Center of Excellence.